estimate as presented by our Minister of Finance here this morning with all of his details. Mr. Speaker, I want to first of all begin by simply indicating what is really meant by a supplementary estimate. And to say to this Honorable House and to the people of this country that a supplementary is simply a request for additional funds by the ministry, by the departments, by the government during the course of the year. So we need some additional money. And of course, we can need additional money for a number of reasons. It could be that the allocations made when the budget was approved were insufficient for a particular project or program or activity. It could be that something special might have occurred during the year which would warrant some additional resources. So there are a number of reasons. And the supplementary estimates that are before us embark all those reasons to justify its request. Obviously, we all know that on July the 1st, we experienced the Hurricane Beryl, and the destruction it will have caused to our agriculture, to our housing, and to the country as a whole. And hence the need, Mr. Speaker, sir, for additional resources for us to attend to those destruction. So, Mr. Speaker, under the Ministry of Agriculture, of the 269.6 million supplementary total that we are requesting, the Ministry of Agriculture is requesting for an additional 17.9 million. And as the Minister of Finance would have indicated, those monies are to be used to provide assistance to our fisher folks of 2.9 million, and a total of 15 million to be used to provide assistance to our farmers, to provide farm labor support, to provide income support, farm input support to our farmers. But Mr. Speaker, I want to indicate that shortly after Beryl, our ministry staff went around the country, visited the whole island, from Tong to Sotters, and Carriacou, and Pitimatlik, and got an appreciation of the extent of the damage that was done. And we were able to appreciate the extent of the damage that was done to our agricultural sector and to our fisheries sector. And we immediately started to work to provide relief to our farmers. So our extension officers were out providing support and encouragement to our farmers. I myself was out, and I in fact made an early release to our farmers, indicating to them that we are coming to give you the kind of support that you need. The staff of the Ministry of Agriculture, they were all out. And therefore what we did, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that we took a two-pronged approach to respond to the situation. We put together a relief package for all of our farmers and fisher folks affected by Beryl. But we also, Mr. Speaker, put together a redevelopment package, a package to redevelop the agricultural sector. And that package is being finalized very soon. And I may speak a little bit about it shortly. But I want to repeat, Mr. Speaker, the exact support that we agreed upon, the income support we agreed upon to give to our crop farmers and to our nutmeg and cocoa farmers. And in the press conferences that we would have had, we indicated to crop farmers and to cocoa and nutmeg farmers that those whose area of land is up to 5 acres, they are going to receive an income support of $4,500. And those whose acres of land is above 5 acres going to receive a one-off $9,000. We also indicated that agri-processors and those who export fresh agricultural produce, they too will be receiving income support of $4,500. And I want to say to people of this country that the Ministry of Finance staff is presently working to have the arrangement in place to make sure those payouts are made in the coming months. No more than 3 months from now, the farmers should receive those payouts. But apart from that, Mr. Speaker, we do have ongoing programs right now that provide direct assistance to our farmers. So we have the Agricultural Development Assistance Program, in which farmers get farm labor support, in which farmers have access to clearing of the lands. They have access to weed eaters, they have access to chainsaws that will help them to clear the land. In fact, we are putting out a team of chainsaws contractors, and they will go out and assist farmers in the clearing of the lands, because there is still some lands to be cleared. Under this program, farmers are being distributed, they are being given plantlets at a very, very cheap, a very low price. The Maribo Farm, the Maribo Propagation Station, and the other stations they are operating, and they are providing plantlets to our farmers. We have, under the Farmer Assistance Program, we are distributing, or we are selling to our farmers NPK fertilizers, very cheap. It is the cheapest you ever see fertilizers, $1 per kilo. So you can get a 25 kilo bag of fertilizers for $25. You can get a 50 kilo bag of fertilizers for $50. And farmers are making full use of all of that as they move towards rebuilding themselves and rebuilding their farms. So we have moved, Mr. Speaker, we have moved quickly to give assistance to our farmers, while at the same time we're putting measures in place to give them that income support that they greatly need. Under the Ministry of Economic Development and Planning, Mr. Speaker, the supplementary allocation is $23.4 million. $23.4 million. And those, as explained by the Minister for Finance, those monies are for different areas. I wanted to zero in a little bit on where these monies are going. And I wanted to make reference to the fact that we have 15 million of those monies to improve farm access roads. And I want the nation to know where these roads are. You have the Mount Rule Bridge in St. Patrick's, $269,000. The Badia Bridge in St. David's, $4.8 million. The Chamber Road in St. Patrick's, $1 million. The Wrecking Road in St. David's, $1.5 million. Rukin. The Spring Garden Road in St. Andrew, $1 million. The Dumfries Road in Carrico, my friend here, we didn't leave you out at all, 0.6 million, and of course the Mongdo Road in Carriacou, 4.7 million. So all these monies, Mr. Speaker, are going into ensuring our farmers have good access rules, and these are monies we're going to spend this year. I also want to point out, Mr. Speaker, that we are going to construct 15 hydroponics units for our foragers. For those schools that have the forage, we're going to receive 15 hydroponic units, those primary schools, 15 hydroponics units. And hydroponic is a demonstration of a model of what climate smart agriculture should be all about. So I wanted to refer to these as major activities to take place under our supplementary for the ministry. The others are there, and I suppose we all could read them, and the Minister of Finance will have indicated what they were, or what they are in some detail. Mr. Speaker, before I close, I want to recognize and to express our gratitude for the support that we in the Ministry of Agriculture got when Beryl passed. And that support came from regional and international organizations. It came from bilateral governments. And in that regard, I want to point out the support that we will have received from the Minister of Agriculture, of the OECS, the oil pledge in a special meeting that we had, the technical support, and the support to provide us with seeds and plantlets. I want to recognize the support we received from the government of Guyana, who gave us 2 shade houses, which we constructed, and which the President of Guyana also visited while he was here for the CARICOM meeting. And the government of Guyana, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, sir, also gave us 8 scholarships. 8 scholarships for young Grenadians to pursue diplomas and certificate in agriculture at the University of Guyana. And we are working on identifying our students through TAMCC to take up those scholarships. Mr. Speaker, I want to recognize the support we receive from regional institutions like the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, ICA, like the Caribbean Agricultural Research and Development Institute, CARDI, for example, FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization. They all came to our assistance, and they all pledged support to us as we provide assistance and as we rebuild our agricultural sector. I also need to mention, Mr. Speaker, of course, the People's Republic of China, who have in fact provided us with finance, with equipment, and of course with tools. But also, Mr. Speaker, I also want to recognize the work of the staff in the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Economic Development and Planning during that period. Very early, the staff took the initiative and put together the plan in terms of what they would have to do following Beryl. In the Ministry of Agriculture, in the Ministry of Economic Development, the staff took the decision and said to the Cabinet that we are going to conduct an assessment of the damage that was done. And with support from the UNDP and from other organizations, the World Bank and the Caribbean Development Bank, they were able to provide support on the extent of the damage that was done by Beryl, and Cabinet will soon take a decision as the official report on the extent of the damage that was done. In light of all of this, Chairman, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry is planning a Farmers Appreciation Day next month at a place called Papadizia St. Andrews, in which we are going to recognize all of our standing farmers and give farmers the kind of encouragement that they need so that they can get back to the land. But I also want to recognize, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, sir, the support that we receive from our internal organizations, the GCLA, the Grainer Cooperative Association, and the Grainer Cocoa Association. They were in full contact with us, and they provide guidance in terms of what kind of support we should provide to our farmers, especially the cocoa and nutmeg farmers. In that regard, the government of Grenada has to be commended for taking out insurance for the cocoa and nutmeg farmers. And with that insurance that we took out with a cooperative-based insurance company in Dominica called COPEF, the cocoa and nutmeg farmers would have received a payout of $3.4 million. And of that $3.4 million, we are going to utilize $1 million for insurance coverage again next year, and the remaining $2.4 million will be distributed to our farmers. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I also mentioned that the ministry is seriously absorbed right now in designing a redevelopment plan for the agricultural industry in Grenada. That plan, Mr. Speaker, will entail, in part, the utilization of our government estates. There are many government estates right now that are just there lying idle. We need to use them to ensure food security and to produce. And the ministry is right now working on a plan for the production of the government estates. That plan will involve the utilization of technology in agriculture. Technology in agriculture, Mr. Speaker, has gone far, and really and truly, we're still somewhat behind in that regard. And the plan will, in fact, give a greater role to technology in agriculture going forward. That plan, Mr. Speaker, will involve a greater participation of our young people in agriculture. Starting, of course, with our Youth in Agriculture program that we have, which is based now in Nassages. That plan would seek to involve more of our young people in agriculture, not just for cash crop, but also in the traditional crops, cocoa, nutmeg, and banana. And of course, that plan would go beyond that, and it would seek to strengthen that linkage with agriculture and agro-processing and the finding of external markets for such products. So, Mr. Speaker, while the supplementary estimates provide, in essence, some of the relief measures that we are going to make available to our farmers, it also embarks aspects of the redevelopment of our agricultural sector. And I'm saying to you, Mr. Speaker, and to the people of this country, that we do have a Prime Minister who gives full support to agriculture in this country. Full support. Whenever
he's an aspiring farmer.
Whenever we go to him, Mr. Speaker, sir, and we present to him proposals for the development of the agricultural sector, he smiles. It's the time when I see him the happiest. He smiles, he shares his ideas, and he gives full support. And one example was when we went to him for the insurance. because we went there a few days before the deadline. And he clicked his finger. He said, let's go ahead. Good? So, with a strong Prime Minister, and with me, and with a strong team in the Ministry of Agriculture, put it this way, the industry is in very good hands, and we are working without rest. We are working assiduously to build a strong, sustainable, climate-smart agriculture industry here in Grenada. And therefore, we give full support to the supplementary estimates as presented by our Minister for Finance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable MP for St. Andrews Southwest. Honourable MP for St. George Northeast.
This one might be easy. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would be brief. I think, in all honesty, notwithstanding the devastation, that it is pretty much clear that a response of Hurricane Beryl is required. Just permit me, I'm just trying to pull up my presentation here. No, not a senior moment at all. All right, thank you. Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding that it is pretty self-explanatory what the supplementary budget aims to do, I think, honestly, I want to start off with these few words. The wicked flee when no man pursueth. And I speak specifically to the actions of the Leader of His Majesty's Opposition and the members of Parliament on the other side. And I say this honestly to all Grenadians, that, well, should I repeat it? The wicked flee when no man pursueth. I say this to all Grenadians, because here we are dealing with a very serious issue in our country today, and having to use the means available to us, which is the supplementary appropriation bill as presented by the Honourable Minister of Finance and member for St. Patrick East, to be able to commence the restoration, to commence the initial response, and to commence essentially the process of building back Carriacou and Petite Martinique better than we met it. And here we are, and have members openly playing politics. Now, there are some things, Mr. Speaker, in my view, that do not warrant specific partisan arguments, and it requires the maturity. It's funny how we are always often referred to as children, and some are referred to as grandfather and father of Parliament. But when it comes to actually being responsible and showing the measured response that is required and maturity to really move our country forward, we can't see much of that. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to start off on this note and say that I support the bill as presented by the Minister of Finance and Honourable Member for St. Patrick East, the Honourable Dennis Cornwall, in his presentation. Mr. Speaker, the appropriation bill gives, or rather this appropriation bill, gives the initial economic response by the government of Grenada to the monster that we have all come to know as Hurricane Beryl. It focuses primarily on the short to medium-term goals or responses that is required, and does not seek to replace that long-term goal of rebuilding Grenada as a resilient state. And let me just explain what I mean by that. Now, Hurricane Beryl occurred on July 1st. The government of Grenada will have to respond. They have done a number of things. All of it is out there. The information is general. And therefore, the need for us now to begin to lay the structural foundation to roll out the response is what we must get to. So for example, as we discuss this budget, Mr. Speaker, where we sit, or at least where I sit, I see two main threats that loom on the horizon in the response to the aftermath of Beryl. And one, we are still well within the hurricane season. So to say that we must just go berserk and just start to spend money and start to do all kinds of things without first looking at implications, without first managing and putting a system in place is going to be careless. Further to that, God forbid, what if we get another threat and have Hurricane Isaac to deal with? We do not know how we will be able to respond if we do not put the necessary structure in place to give that response and even deal with it. Could you imagine Grenada and Carriacou having to deal, and Peter Martin having to deal with another hurricane on its shores? So let us go measured, and let us not try to seek to engage in political grandstanding and believing in a narrative and misinformation that is out there by some people on what is happening in Grenada and in specific Carriacou and Peter Martin. The second issue, Mr. Speaker, of threat that I believe looms as it relates to our response is the question of limited relief supplies. Now, disasters happen all over the world. Grenada is not a special case. And as such, given the fact that we are already in hurricane season, any number can play. Any other country can get affected, and therefore the interests will divert. And so the need for us, when we talk about obtaining resources to be able to treat with the response, for it to be a measured one, cannot be understated. So, the initial response of government has been to, on island in Carriacou, Peter Martin, to rebuild the medical stations, to ensure that we rebuild the police station, the revenue office, the hospital, the infrastructure as it relates to roads, the preparation for schools, etc. Some argue that what we should do is take all the resources, limited as they are, that we get to build homes. We, Mr. Speaker, are engaging in home repairs. But this home repair is just almost a temporary home repair that is required, because we cannot rebuild the homes the same way and suffer the fate either later on down this year or next year by the ravages of another hurricane. So responsible governance requires us to look at the situation in its entirety and apply specific measures that can be able to, one, deal with the now in the immediate, and also chart the course forward and lay the foundation for medium and long-term building. So this is what this response is about from a budget, supplementary budget standpoint, and it seeks specifically to treat with those matters. And when we talk about resources being limited, you just heard from the Minister of Economic Development, also responsible for agriculture, that the need to refocus so that we can expand production, get the farmers back up to a semblance of normalcy is critical. As I mentioned, we have limited resources dealing with. And if we need to continue to feed Carriacou and Peter Martin, we need to be in a position on mainland to do so. So I want to commend, honestly, the Ministry of Agriculture for their vision and foresight, although I heard this morning that the budget lacked some of that. So we need to ensure that we are focusing on the objectives of the now and to be able to lay the foundation for the future. Mr. Speaker, the last thing I would like to mention as it relates to this is the question of our education system. Now, we came out from COVID-19 about 4 years ago, and we had to treat with the upending of school services, which had to go online and digital and so on, and frustration that these things caused. I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, that what we need to do now is begin to speak to the issue as to how the students in Carriacou and Peter Martin will be able to continue their education in the context of the difficulty of COVID-19, of Hurricane Beryl and seek to put the measures in place early so that we do not have next year negative impacts as a result of them not being able to get their education. So this is the kind of conversation I would have liked to hear this morning, or debate or discussion on the supplementary, where we could be able to allocate sufficient resources to be able to treat with these matters. And finally, the last issue that I would like to raise as it relates to the supplementary budget, or rather, the last point I would like to make as it relates to the supplementary budget has to do, Mr. Speaker, with where do we see ourselves? Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, whether we understand that or not, is a vulnerable state in the light of disasters, specifically in this instance, hurricanes, tropical systems. We cannot continue to build as we were, let's say a year or two ago, or even more than that. Hurricane Ivan did struck Grenada, but by and large, the mindset of contractors, the mindset of homeowners, other residents who build stuff remain the same. We have to upgrade our the building codes are there, I am told, but we have to upgrade the actual implementation of what we build, especially for public use. The damages that we saw in Carriacou, while it may not have been thought about, speaks really to a lack of strong structural buildings. And to an extent, you cannot build for category 4 or 5, but we must be able, Mr. Speaker, to put mechanisms in place to avoid the total devastation that we saw. And so when we talk about the need to invest more in schools, when we talk about the need to invest more in healthcare, it's not only from a systemic standpoint, but certainly the infrastructure that is required to be able to protect people is important. So, Mr. Speaker, with these few words, I want to say that I support it, and it lays the foundation in the event that something happens, that we may have to see mass evacuations from Carriacou, Petite Martinique, God forbid, that we have the police, the hospital, the revenue office, other government public buildings and entities have that structure up and running so that we could be able to facilitate, not so much with ease, but at least with some level of assurance that lives are going to be preserved should Grenada become under threat in the near future or not so near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable MP for St. George Northeast. Honorable MP for Carriacou and Petite Martinique.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I start, with your leave, I'll ask us to just, for 1 minute, pause to remember the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique who lost their lives during this devastating Hurricane Beryl. It will be remiss of me, Mr. Speaker, if I, their representative, started this debate to support this motion, this bill, didn't pause and recognize. So with your leave, Mr. Speaker.
Granted, Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, July 1st will forever remain in the hearts and minds of the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. I recall the Friday before the 1st of July, a team, cabinet colleagues and I went to New York. At that time, the projection for Beryl is that it was heading to Barbados. That was a projection. And by Saturday evening, the story changed. And we were attending an event Saturday in New York. And the people said something is wrong with the MP because he's certainly not himself. Because at that time I'm tracking and I'm realizing that this thing is going to head directly to Carriacou. So immediately I told the team, listen, I need to head back to Carriacou. Because if this hurricane impacts Carriacou, if one person has died, we all have to die together. So I said it's important that I head back. And I thank God that I made that decision to be with the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Others could have easily gone to Battleship or go someplace and hide. But I decided to go and stand with my people because I care and love for them. And Mr. Speaker, when I look at the devastation after Beryl, I heard someone talking about no communication. There's absolutely no communication. I think I managed to get the Prime Minister the day after, and other officials after, the day after, because there was absolutely no communication. And 1 month, 3 weeks and days after, we still have communication issues. Mr. Speaker, from our hospital, our police station, our clinics, only one managed to withstand those hurricane force winds. Our schools which were hurricane shelters, Mr. Speaker, where people was in the shelters at the time of the passage of the hurricane, crumbled. It's only by God's grace that the death toll wasn't more. I give God thanks for that. What we witnessed in Carriacou, Mr. Speaker, I don't wish it on my worst enemy. Total devastation. Our housing stock, agriculture, you name it. So when I hear people, or when I see people trying to make politics out of this situation, I say to them that there's a time and a place for everything. This is certainly not the time for politics. This is a time for us to unite the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, and for all hands to be on deck so that we can rebuild a more resilient Carriacou and Petit Martinique. So, Mr. Speaker, this supplemental budget is a budget that is designed for us to respond to the devastating impact of Hurricane Beryl. I want to commend my colleagues, Mr. Speaker, for their hard work, sacrifice, Mr. Speaker, and their encouragement during this very, very difficult time. And I want to point out, Mr. Speaker, the member for St. George's Northeast, who came to Carriacou to act as an extra shoulder, an extra hand, if you want to put it that way. So I want to, yes. So I want to thank you very much for that. And at this time, Mr. Speaker, we could not have asked for a better leader, for a better Prime Minister at this time. His stewardship, his steady hand, and cool head, which is needed now more than ever. Something I have to learn from him, but it takes time. Mr. Speaker, I have absolutely no doubt that the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique and Carriacou and Petit Martinique on a whole will rise from the ashes. We are, after all, a resilient people. History has taught us that. And the process has begun. So the Ministry of Environment, Minister, through Mr. Speaker, Minister James and her team, are working closely with our ministry, the Ministry of Carriacou and Petit Martinique Affairs and Local Government, to start the process of the cleanup effort in Carriacou. We have 9 crews, 7 in Carriacou, 2 in Petit Martinique. And Mr. Speaker, if you visited Carriacou just after Beryl to now, you wouldn't think that a hurricane passed with the amount of debris that is no longer on the roadside and the street side and so on, because the cleanup effort is having significant progress, if you want to put it that way. So when I hear them say that there is no response and what is being done, that is something that's being done. In addition to that, another cleanup aspect that will be starting soon is the marine cleanup. All the wrecks, the yachts and boats that were washed ashore, are stuck in the lagoon. The Ministry of Environment is assiduously putting plans in place, and that process should start in a couple of days, if you want to put it that way. So again, another response that will assist us. Of course, we have to do it. We have to ensure that that is done, because you don't want the oils and the gas from those vessels, those boats, to get into the water and have that impact on our ecosystem, our marine life. Mr. Speaker, through the Ministry of Social Development, the ministry did its initial payout to seed beneficiaries. In addition, did an additional top-up so that seed beneficiaries can access critical supplies, medications, what have you, that are required. So all ministries, Mr. Speaker, came together to assist us and is assisting us with the response in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. And I want you to understand, Mr. Speaker, the reason all this has been done, especially, and we have to depend solely on the ministers and the ministries on mainland, is that all government services is compromised or affected. Our ministry building was destroyed. Our administrative building destroyed. And work is now being done to restore those buildings. So I know that it will be a long road ahead, and we have to temper people's expectation. But I also want the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique to know that no one will be left behind. This administration has proven itself time and time again, whereby we made a statement and our actions speaks for itself. We have demonstrated with our initial response thus far that we are mindful of the seriousness and the situation in Carriacou and Petit Martinique, and that we are taking this very seriously, and that we recognize that this needs to be an all hands on deck approach, and that we are all in this together. And the fact that Prime Minister and his regional colleagues came to Carriacou, and several delegations came to Carriacou that have never been to Carriacou before, never heard of Carriacou before, Petit Martinique.
it sends a signal that backs up what I've been saying, that no one will be left behind. And all the measures that we have announced thus far, the people of Carrick and Petite Martinique are grateful for what has been announced. The business community, Mr. Speaker, is looking forward with great anticipation for the drawdown of that $25 million, which will assist them in their reactivating their business. The farmers, fishermen in Carrick are also anxiously awaiting the necessary payouts so that they can start back the process of farming in Carriacou and Petite Martinique once more. So we understand the government must put structures in place that require strategy, planning, and executing, and that don't happen overnight. And I want to repeat to the people of Carrick and Petite Martinique again that no one will be left behind. I'm just straying a little. I keep hearing some people talk about how they care about the people of Carrick and Petite Martinique. But they could only fool themselves, Mr. Speaker. Because an opportunity was given to them this morning to prove their salt, to prove their worth, to even make recommendations and suggestions, Mr. Speaker, and to give inputs, and to even speak to the people of Carrick and Petite Martinique in the People's House that may comfort them, Mr. Speaker. Instead, they walked out of Parliament. But you know what was interesting? They didn't want to be here, you know. Because before we even started, they were arguing why we should speak for so long. Arguing about the amount of time they should speak, and they shouldn't speak for all this amount of time or what have you. We were elected to represent the people. And we understand that when we're elected, we're going to spend a lot of time inside here doing the people's business. And when you see individuals are not concerned about the people's business and more concerned about political grandstanding, it sends a message. And I hope the people of Carrick and Petite Martinique is looking on and paying attention. See for yourselves those that have their political agenda and motive, that are only interested in political grandstanding and political mischief, and pay attention to this team that are putting forward the plans for you, the people of Carrick and Petite Martinique, that will help you bounce back better and stronger. Pay attention. So, Mr. Speaker, as I stated,